All right, today we're going to be talking about Section 3, graphing functions. Today you will finally learn how to start graphing some of these equations that you've been seeing. Okay, so why graph functions? Go ahead and write this down. Why graph functions? So you can see all solutions. So you can see all solutions to an equation. Okay? Now, there's three different ways that you can see solutions to any type of function. Okay, the first is an ordered pair. And we talked about that yesterday and the day before a little bit. Okay, so an ordered pair looks something like this. Okay, and an ordered pair shows one solution to an equation. Okay, so an ordered pair shows one solution, and 1, 4, that's what it would look like. Okay, the second type of way to see solutions is by a table of values. Okay, you've seen table of values. It would look something like this, where you have your x's on one side and your y's on the other. Now, when we're doing table of values, you will always use the same values every time. So we're always going to use 0, 1, and 2. And you will get it whatever x or y value comes out. Okay, but this is what a table of value looks like. Again, a table of values shows few solutions. So it just gives you a few solutions of the total amount of solutions for your equation. Okay, lastly, a graph. So something that looks like this, and you might have a line that's graphed on there. Okay, so a graph would show all solutions. Okay, so if you need to show all solutions, a graph would be your best method of doing that. Okay, now when you're graphing things, I want you to know 5 steps of doing so. Okay, and we're going to have to add in a few here. Okay, but step 1 is going to be solve for y. Okay, and we've learned how to do that over the last couple of days. Okay, but step 1 needs to be solve for y. Step 2, set up table of values. Okay, step 2, set up table of values. I'm going to need you to add in a couple, so I forgot to put it in there. Okay, so step 3, and go ahead and write this out. Okay, so step 3 is going to be plug x coordinates into the equation to find y. Plug x coordinates into the equation to find y. Okay, step 4. Okay, step 4 is going to be plot your points. And finally, step 5 will be connect your points. Okay, so there's your 5 different steps for solving graphing equations and graphing functions. So we're going to try a couple of these. Okay, so let's look at number 1. graph the function y equals minus 2x plus 1. Well, we know the first step is to solve for y, but fortunately, this equation is already solved for. Okay, so we can go ahead and go to step 2, which, if you remember, was to set up a table of values. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up a table of values. So we have an x and a y side. And your x values are always going to be 0, 1, and 2. That makes our math a little bit easier. So what you're going to do is go ahead and plug in those x values into your equation. So wherever you see an x, we're going to plug in a 0. Okay, so minus 2 times 0 is 0. And if we add 1, we get 1. So our y value would equal 1. And let's do this for each of them. So this time our x value is 1. So wherever you see an x, you'll plug in a 1. So you have negative 2 times 1, which is negative 2. Add 1, and you get negative 1. Okay. And lastly, we're going to plug in a 2. Okay, so negative 2 times 2 would give us negative 4. And if we add 1, you get negative 3. Okay, so here is our steps here. And let's go ahead and plot our points. We practiced this the other day. So we have 0, 1. So we're simply going to go left and right 0 and up 1 on our graph. Then we have 1, negative 1, so we go right 1 and down 1. And lastly, we have 2, negative 3. So we'll go right 2 and down 3. So here's your graph. And once you have your points plotted, you can then go ahead and connect them with a line. Okay, and there would be your first graph. Okay, make sure you have all these notes down, and we'll keep on going. All right, let's try another one. Okay, let's try this guy. Now, we know that we have to, step 1, get it solved for y. This is what we've been practicing. So you have to undo this positive 2x with subtraction. So subtract 2x on both sides. Those x's cancel. And then we bring down all the pieces just as we would see them. Y equals negative 2x plus 3. Okay, so we have solved for y. And now we need to set up our table of values. So we have our x values and our y values. And remember that our x values are always going to be 0, 1, and 2. And then we simply plug those into our equation, this guy up here. So we would have y equals negative 2 times 0 and add 3. Negative 2 times 0 gives you 0. And if you add 3 to that, that would give you 3. So our y value does in fact equal 3. Okay, next one. We have y equals negative 2 times 1 plus 3. Negative 2 times 1 gives you negative 2. And if you add 3, that would give you 1. And lastly, let's plug in our 2 here. So y equals negative 2 times 2 plus 3. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. And if you add 3 to that, that would give you negative 1. Okay, so you'll notice on our table here that we have a pattern. So every time x goes up by 1, y goes down by 2. You'll start noticing these patterns, so eventually you won't even have to do all this work. You'll just start seeing the patterns and then go ahead and graph it accordingly. Okay, so our next step is then to go ahead and graph our points. So we knew that our first point was 0, 3. So we go left and right 0 and up 3 to get our point. Then we have 1, 1. And lastly, 2, -1. So here's our 3 plotted points. And our last step is to simply draw a line through them. Okay? All right. I would like you guys to try this guy right here. You try number 1 all by yourself. Okay, so take a few minutes, solve for y, and go through your 5 steps of graphing. Okay, let's try one more together, and then we'll be done. Okay, so step 1, let's solve this guy for y. Well, you'll notice that in this function, y is already by itself. Okay, but it looks weird, so let's rewrite it as y equals 2x plus 1. Okay, so we've got it solved for y. Now we need to set up our table of values. Okay, but before we set up the table of values, I have a rather solid joke for you.